this Wednesday night. Korea's parliament concludes its 100-day session near empty-handed. We'll tell you why. Within a broad framework, says Seoul's defense ministry, the U.S. has agreed to transfer a set of technologies required for South Korea's $15 billion indigenous fighter jet program. And December 20th it is. The highly anticipated Korea-China FTA will come into effect as of that date, granting Korean businesses freer access, the huge potential of a 1.3 billion strong market. NewsCenter begins right now. Good evening to our viewers in Korea and hello to those around the world. Welcome to NewsCenter. Police will give the leader of the country's second largest umbrella union until noon tomorrow to carry out an arrest. Now, that leader is currently in hiding at a temple in central Seoul. This is in response to the religious authorities' request to have another chance at convincing the leader to turn himself in a peaceful manner. Our Lee-Soon reports.
The head of the Korean Federation of Trade Unions will have until noon on Thursday to voluntarily leave the Chogyesa temple. Han Sang-gyun has been taking refuge at the Buddhist temple since November 16th after police sought his arrest for allegedly masterminding clashes between officers and protesters in an anti-government demonstration in Seoul last month. Police cannot enter the temple without the permission of the religious authority. On Tuesday, the head of the National Police Agency, Kang Shin-myung, had issued an ultimatum to Han, saying that he will be forced out with a court-issued warrant if he does not turn himself in by 4 p.m. on Wednesday. But Han remained in hiding, prompting police forces to reconnect a demolished bridge that connects the building where Han is hiding with another in order to arrest Han. However, at 5 p.m., Chogyesa Temple's Venerable Chasen requested a new deadline.
We will find a solution for this situation by tomorrow at noon.
Police accepted the request and made it clear that if Han does not turn himself in until noon on Thursday, they will immediately enter the temple and make the arrest. Police forces also have not pulled out from the temple in central Seoul in order to prevent Han from attempting an escape during the nighttime. Meanwhile, members of the Korean Federation of Trade Unions have begun an emergency meeting at 9 p.m. on Wednesday to make the final decision about when and how their leader will head out of the temple. Lee-Soon, Arirang News.
Japanese police has taken into custody a South Korean man in connection with a recent suspected explosion inside a stall in a public restroom at Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo. Now, the shrine is seen as a symbol of Imperial Japan's militarism before and during World War II. Among those arrested, there are Class A war criminals. Well, the 27-year-old South Korean denies all charges. For details, here's Arirang News' Song Ji-sun.
A Korean man suspected of detonating an explosive device at Japan's war shrine last month has been arrested. 27-year-old male surnamed Chun was taken into custody after flying into Tokyo from Korea on Wednesday morning and is being questioned by Japanese police. An explosion was heard coming from inside a restroom at the Yasukuni Shrine on the morning on November 23rd. Police found steel pipes with explosives, batteries, and a timer. No one was injured by the explosion. Chun arrived in Japan 2 days before the incident and was caught on security cameras at the site a day before. He left Japan the day of the incident, but was caught on camera at the shrine carrying a backpack and another bag 30 minutes before the blast. DNA tests on cigarette butts found in the restroom and his hotel room matched. Chun served in the Korean Air Force for 5 years until being discharged earlier this year. Chun is denying allegations, with his mother saying her good-hearted son is not likely to scheme anything that could hurt others. The Korean consulate in Tokyo spoke with Chun, but no details have been released as of yet. Korea and China view the Yasukuni Shrine, where millions of Japan's war dead are honored, including Class A war criminals, as a symbol of Japan's past imperialism. Relations with Japan are constantly sour when its leaders, including current Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, visit the shrine. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The United States has agreed to transfer 21 technologies that are seen as crucial in developing Korea's indigenous fighter jet project. Well, the issue has been in the spotlight since April when the U.S. State Department declined to transfer 4 core technologies, leaving many here to speculate that it may be difficult to receive the remaining 21 as well. Arirang News national defense correspondent joins me from Seoul's defense ministry. Hyun-min, it now appears that all hurdles have been cleared, so South Korea has received confirmation of the key tech transfer, so Seoul's homegrown fighter jet project is good to go now.
Well, Kanya, there's more to it than that. Korea's defense ministry says, looking at the big picture, the U.S. agreed to transfer the 21 technologies, but some sub-technologies needed to develop the project was left out. Korea's defense ministry says Washington has agreed to transfer the needed 21 key technologies for developing the KFX project.
Looking at the big picture, the U.S. agreed to transfer the 21 technologies. In addition, some of the specific technologies have to go through additional consultations in the future.
A Korean government delegation was in Washington for 3 days, from December 1st, for talks with U.S. defense giant Lockheed Martin to discuss issues surrounding the KFX technology transfers. Korea's defense ministry said the U.S. is well aware of the importance of developing the project, thus vowing to fully support it.
Both Korea and the U.S. acknowledged the strategic importance of the KFX project, and Washington reiterated that it will help out to its maximum extent.
Some experts worry, though, that there might be difficulties in receiving a number of specific sub-technologies needed for the project.
Out of the 21 technologies, there are over 500 sub-technologies, but there is a possibility that we can receive 10 of sub-technologies. If that happens, more time and money is needed, and a hole in our defense will be inevitable.
Korea and Lockheed Martin agreed to provide 25 combat technologies, but the U.S. State Department in April rejected 4 key technology transfers, including the active electronically scanned radar and electro-optical targeting pod, raising concerns it will become difficult to obtain the remaining technologies. The $15 billion fighter jet project aims to develop 120 homegrown mid-tier fighter jets by the mid-2020s. The project is aimed at replacing Korea's aging fleet of F-4s and F-5s that are currently running over the life cycle.
Which, of course, only underscores the importance of developing these fighter jets with stellar quality and in time. Thank you, Hyun-min. That was our national defense correspondent, Kim Hyun-bin, from the Ministry of National Defense in Seoul. The deadline has passed, and the National Assembly's 100-day-long regular session has come to an end without anything fruitful, really. Lawmakers called it a day after passing some 100 bills for non-contentious matters, but failing to approve crucial bills that the rival parties had been struggling to agree upon. Our parliamentary correspondent Kim Young-gil reports.
The last regular session of the 19th National Assembly has come to an end. Amid President Park Geun-hye's continued orders to pass contentious bills, rival parties failed to even pass bills that they had previously agreed upon last week.
The agreements that we previously made were not just agreements between the two parties, but they were a promise made to our people.
Both sides of the aisle agreed to pass a bill to promote Korea's service industry, a bill on North Korea's human rights issues, and an anti-terrorism bill for the public safety backed by the ruling Saenuri Party.
The only thing on the president's mind was passing the service sector bill and pressuring us.
The main opposition MPAD is against the Service Promotion Act until a part related to the medical industry is removed due to concerns it could lead to the privatization of the health sector. However, the same fate awaited the opposition bloc's bill to facilitate cooperation between conglomerates and small and medium-sized companies, which failed to earn bipartisan support. As lawmakers need to continue negotiations over crucial bills, the ruling bloc called for opening an extraordinary session on Thursday. But it is unclear whether the opposition camp will decide to participate in the extra session. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Oil collapsed below $37 a barrel on Tuesday for the first time since the depth of the Great Recession in February 2009. The latest plunge in oil prices comes after last week's decision by OPEC not to cut oil output following a contentious 6-hour meeting. Well, the oil cartel essentially left production near record highs despite the oversupply problem. Can oil prices dip even further, and how will it impact the global as well as the Korean economy? Arirang News correspondent Shin Se-min is live in the studio with me. Se-min, first thing first, why the crash in oil prices now?
Well, the reality is there's just too much oil in the world. That really is a simple story, and the supply doesn't seem to dwindle anytime soon. Now, under the deal, the OPEC will continue its production at current levels, pumping out 31.5 million barrels of oil per day. Now, if you look at this graphic here, the U.S. Standard West Texas Intermediate has been fluctuating, hitting over $110 mark in mid-2010, and then cracked the $60 mark earlier this year in June, and then to $37.44 a barrel now. Now, in the recent 6 months, the global price had fallen almost 40%. And with the Iranian oil jumping into the market early next year, or to be exact, in second quarter next year, the global oil prices are likely to get slammed even more, sliding even further, raising concerns in the global economy.
Well, Se-min, I don't see why we should be so worried here in Korea in the immediate term, because sliding crude oil prices give a relief for consumers at the pump, which will boost consumer spending, which is what we need so dearly at this point, no?
That's right. It's simple. From the consumer's point of view, cheaper oil means better gas price, and it also means improved domestic economy. And it's really a simple equation. If you look at it, if the global oil prices fall, then the production cost of local firms also drops. Then that will boost the competitiveness in the global market, improving the local economy on the back of prospering local firms. But experts say that equation isn't corresponding with the current global economy.
There isn't enough demand globally, so even if there's enough production for all, the demand isn't as strong as it used to be, leaving many companies' warehouses stocked with low purchasing power, leading to the firm's losses.
It's also the slowdown in China's economy, as well as slower growth in other emerging countries that have contributed to make demand almost non-existent.
As for the Korean economy, what kind of industries are expected to benefit from this downward trend of oil price?
Well, of course, there are sectors that are benefiting the most, like namely the renewable energy sectors, which barely includes crude oil in its production, and not to mention the airliners, because they basically run on oil. At the same time, the ever-declining oil price is casting a blanket over Korea's leading export sectors. For one, Korea's shipbuilding, steel, and machinery industries are just a few hit hard, with its impact also seen in the construction business. Already this year alone, the number of contracts in the Middle East dropped by 52% this year compared to the previous year, and it is the lowest number of deals since 2006. The culprit, it's a slump in the Middle Eastern economy, forcing firms there to cancel or delay projects. Now, experts say that down the line, the country's export sectors will heavily affect unless they do something about it.
Cheaper oil price is something that cannot be controlled, so unless local exporters adopt such circumstance, for instance, by coming up with an alternative measure that will not be affected by low oil prices, exports will continue to fall even lower.
So adopting such changes by hunting for industries that require less exposure to oil, crude oil, or by coming up with a new growth engine, like we always mention, is what experts say that Korean outbound shipping firms need to look for.
So nosediving global oil prices, good news for Korea in the immediate term, but not so much in the longer run.
That's right.
All right, great reporting. Thanks, Se-min, for that.
My pleasure.
A big day on the nation's trade front. December 20th is when trade barriers between Korea and China and Korea and New Zealand will begin to come crumbling down. Anticipation is running high, especially as Korea now has freer access to the 1.3 billion strong Chinese market. 2 more free trade agreements for Korea taking effect in less than 2 weeks. Our Kwon So-ah reports.
The date is set. Korea's FTA with its biggest trade partner, China, is set to go into effect on December 20th. Seoul's Trade Ministry said the agreement came at a meeting in Beijing on Wednesday to speed up the implementation and maximize bilateral benefits. The deal had been inked earlier this year after 14 rounds of negotiations since 2012. According to the ministry, Korean companies are forecast to see swift results given 2 rounds of tariff cuts are due in a short period of time. One this month on the day of the launch and the other on January 1st. On December 20th, almost 960 tariffs will be removed, and eventually the 2 countries will be eliminating tariffs of over 90% of all goods within the next 20 years. After taking effect, Korea's government expects an additional GDP growth of almost 1%, more than 50,000 new jobs, an increase of almost $15 billion in consumer welfare, which are benefits individuals receive from consumption, and annual financial effects worth $270 billion. But some economists have their doubts.
Effects of tax reductions will clearly show. The problem is the demand for the export items we want to expand have to increase too. But due to China's structural changes, demand's continuously dropping, which means tariff effects won't last long.
That's why experts say the service sector should be targeted, on which new tariff cuts could be discussed within 2 years after the FTA takes effect. So far, Korea's focus has been more on the manufacturing sector. Meanwhile, on the same day, in a separate meeting in Wellington, Korea and New Zealand agreed to roll out their FTA on the 20th as well. And another, the Korea-Vietnam deal, may be added to the list before the year ends. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Korea's central bank holds its monthly monetary policy meeting tomorrow, and market expectations no change in key interest rates. That's because the economy is caught up in the middle of a number of issues stemming from in and outside of Korea. Hwang Ji-hye reports.
While the U.S. Federal Reserve is gearing up for its first rate rise in almost a decade next week, the European Central Bank took the opposite direction, laying out a new set of stimulus measures earlier this month. And that divergence is forecast to continue, with the ECB saying it's ready to ease its policy further if necessary.
Deflation pressure will persist in the meantime, due to the oil price down. So most of market participants forecast that there will be some stimulus package in around over 2016.
But the trend of advanced nations focusing heavily on performance at home is prompting concerns that it will stir up greater instability in the global financial markets, resulting in massive capital outflows from emerging economies. While Korea is no exception when it comes to facing such external risks, it's also suffering from slowing exports due to lackluster global demand, mainly from China. Citing such uncertainties, Korea Development Institute slashed its growth outlook for this year to 2.6%, down almost half a percentage point from its earlier forecast. Unpredictability also remains on the domestic front, with household debt climbing rapidly, although the economy posted better than expected growth in the third quarter this year. Under such circumstances, many consider it would be difficult for the Bank of Korea to make any changes in its monetary policy in this month's meeting on Thursday.
Well, I still think like a BOK will hold it. It's not the time to hike it, as I said, but it's not the time to cut either, because the economy is on the gradual recovery path. So.
Given that experts said that most attention is focused on the governor's remarks on the lingering uncertainties at home and abroad, rather than any change in the key rate itself. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
After weeks of tease and Some more of that. Hyundai Motor has finally unveiled the Genesis EQ900, the first model to be sold under the Genesis brand. Korea's largest automobile manufacturer is hoping the new brand will help the company secure a stronger foothold in the global luxury car market. Ready? Our Kwon Jang-ho brings us the new Genesis.
So here it is, the new Genesis. The body has had a sleek redesign. It's got new adaptive LED headlights, but it's kept its signature hexagonal front grille. And of course, there's the badge. Genesis is now officially a new brand, separate from Hyundai. After 7 years of being sold under the Hyundai Motor name, the Genesis line of luxury sedans has been spun off into its own name in a similar way to Toyota and its luxury offshoot Lexus. This EQ900, or G90 as it will be known internationally, is the first to be released under the new name. It's available in 3 different engines, a V6, a twin-turbo V6, and a more powerful V8. The chassis is made of a lightweight, high-strength steel developed by Hyundai itself, and the interior has been given a drastic makeover too. Prices start from $62,000 and go up to almost $100,000. That's more expensive than its competitors, the BMW 5 Series or the Mercedes E-Class in Korea. But 10,000 pre-orders have already been made, and the Genesis creators believe the car has what it takes to compete on the global luxury car market.
It's the right moment in time now for Hyundai to release the Genesis brand. We have also reached a level in design and production methods in technology to be able to be at eye level and compete with other brands.
But experts warn it won't be an easy road ahead.
When considering a luxury brand, heritage is very important, meaning its own history and the traditions. Only because Genesis is launching as a luxury brand doesn't mean it will succeed right away. A lot of time will be needed.
International sales of the G90 will start next year, and by 2020, Genesis plans to release 5 more models, ranging from a sports coupe to an SUV. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Think Korean music, and what probably comes to mind, K-pop or Psy's funky Gangnam Style. But Korea's traditional tunes are not exactly that. They're different, yes, but it could be just as fun and just as beautiful. Our cultural correspondent Kim Ji-yeon brings us to the world of gugak, Korea's traditional tunes.
In tune to the rhythm for one of the singers, the dancer responds back with her own singing and dancing while beating her jango drum. Kim Soo-yeon, who has been a dancer for nearly 50 years, is dancing through the piece titled Pungnu Jango, which puts emphasis on sensuality.
The piece is one of the few folklore pieces passed down through generations that have survived the Japanese colonization of the 20th century. It was originally performed in geisha houses.
But Kim says most of the pieces performed by female dancers heavily put emphasis on women's virtues and spirit, primarily designed to be performed indoors, relying on the space's acoustics to carry the sound. To better preserve the pieces, exclusive stages for gugak performances were built to replicate the sarangbang, or the room in a house where aristocrats gathered to appreciate the arts during the Joseon dynasty. Kim says she can closely replicate the moves of female dancers through the development of such stages, like this one provided by the National Gugak Center in Seoul. Another group utilizing the state-of-the-art halls and facilities of the center is a gugak orchestra, comprised entirely of female players. It is the Ihwa Korean Music Orchestra, which says it strives to promote gugak to the international community by incorporating tradition with modern classics.
The biggest advantage of an all-female orchestra compared to other gugak orchestras is that the group can produce more delicate music to the ears, which is one of the most important qualities when performing fusion gugak.
Performances of traditional Korean music are held here at the National Gugak Center in Seoul on every day of the week except Mondays. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Well, China issued its first ever red alert for air pollution across its capital. There, schools and outdoor constructions have been halted and car use restricted. This comes amid ongoing talks on climate change in Paris, where global leaders are discussing ways to cut back on carbon emissions. Korea is also doing its part, going green. That's our news feature tonight with Oh Soo-young.
Korea's green credit card, a means to motivate customers to make eco-friendly purchases, was introduced at the Paris Climate Change Conference this year as an optimal practice model for low-carbon consumption. It was also in the spotlight at the Green World Awards this year, winning the Champion Prize for environmental best practice. Those using the system can get discounts of up to 24% when they purchase eco-friendly products and up to 20% in public transportation fees.
The green credit card encourages environmentally friendly consumption by offering various incentives for households that buy eco-friendly products and save energy.
In the last 4 years, green credit card users spent $4.4 million on eco-friendly products. And last year, their conscious consumption signified a reduction of about 1.2 million tons in carbon emissions. That's the equivalent to 160 million oak trees of at least 30 years old.
Korea's green credit card offers customers a convenient way of collecting points and various incentives while they're out shopping, without having to consciously change their consumption habits.
Talking on our phones, typing on our laptops, eating takeouts and using piles of paper. These are some of the activities ingrained into our lifestyle that leaves trails of carbon footprints on our planet. And the biggest source of pollution is exhaust gas emitted from cars. To cut down on car use, the city of Seoul has installed 150 spots to rent out bicycles. Instead of driving around the city and leaving behind trails of pollution everywhere you go, you can borrow one of these public bikes. Seoul's public bikes can be used by anyone and any time through a smartphone app. All that is required is to sign up and buy a membership pass. Commuting across Seoul by car emits around 5 kilograms of pollutants. But if you cycle, almost no emissions incur.
Riding bikes as a means of transportation will play an important role in cutting down carbon emissions in the city.
Also, to change our daily consumption habits into more environmentally conscious choices, the Korean government introduced an eco-friendly labelling system. This special label on the soda can shows that it's a low-carbon product that's been approved by the Korean government. And the number over here shows the amount of emissions that incurred from the production, distribution and even the disposal of the product. By picking up an item with one of these labels, consumers can choose to make more eco-friendly purchases. And consumers do seem to be making efforts to consider the environment when shopping.
I think it's the right thing to do to use the green credit card and choose to buy eco-friendly items to help the environment.
I try to shop in a more eco-friendly way if it's good for our future generation.
Beyond Korea, efforts are being made around the world to reduce carbon emissions and tackle global warming. To further encourage emission-cutting habits, experts say that the most fundamental step is raising public awareness of the dire situation.
Climate change is a term that seems rather abstract to most people, so there's a need to boost public education to make people understand why eco-friendly consumption is vital for our future.
Through advanced technologies and improved policies, low-carbon consumption is steadily becoming a conscious way of life in Korea. The country's developments, such as the Green Credit Card scheme, will likely continue to garner international interest as an innovative solution to reducing carbon emissions. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Billionaire Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump is being criticized all around the world for his comments that all Muslims should be banned from entering the U.S. Bruce Harrison joins me live in the studio. Bruce, Trump's not backing down from his proposed ban, and he's being attacked by some very powerful people.
Hello, Kanyang. The White House issued the most scathing denouncement of Trump. It said his comments disqualify him from becoming president and called on Republicans to reject his candidacy. Also, the governments of Canada, the UK, and France denounced Trump, and even China hinted its concern over his remarks.
Well, despite a history of inflammatory remarks and comments during his campaign, Donald Trump still has a major lead over other Republicans. And is his latest comments, is that going to hurt him?
It's hard to say. He's being hammered by so many countries and leaders right now. It's hard to believe that it wouldn't affect his campaign, hurt his campaign rather. But we'll just have to see new poll numbers to see how the American public feels. In California, Muslims called the comments dangerous and undemocratic. Many there are concerned there will be an uptick in Islamophobia following the shooting in San Bernardino recently and Trump's remarks. Travelers in New York expressed equal disgust.
It's not going to solve any problems, and terrorists are not any one color, any one religion. They're just very, sad, unhappy people that have a lot of anger.
Some of Trump's Republican challengers have denounced him as well, even as many call for a suspension of President Barack Obama's plan to allow in 10,000 refugees from Syria. A third attacker at the Bataclan concert hall in Paris has been identified. Sources close to the investigation of last month's citywide attacks named the man as 23-year-old Fouad Mohamed Agad. He was killed in the assault. Prime Minister Manuel Valls confirmed to a French TV news channel that the man had finally been identified. The sources said Mohamed Agad traveled to Syria with other young people at the end of 2013. The other members of that group were arrested and imprisoned after their return in May the following year. Mohamed Agad's older brother, Karim, also visited Syria, and according to sources, he's now in jail in France. Authorities are still searching for key suspect Salah Abdeslam. He's reportedly entered Syria after fleeing the attacks last month that killed 130 people.
Well, on a different note, fans all across the world are gearing up for the release of the latest film of the Star Wars franchise, and some fans can get super extreme when it comes to seeing that movie.
Yeah, super fans, Kun Young. Maybe the most so in the United States. It's common for people to show up early for a midnight premiere, maybe a few hours or a day early. But in Los Angeles, they're already lining up, and the release of Star Wars The Force Awakens, that's its title, is still 10 days away. The line's forming outside the TLC Chinese Theater, but it's not an ordinary line. People can clock in and clock out so they can go to work or the bathroom as they anxiously wait.
A bunch of, people, you have lawyers, doctors, you have no idea who we are as in real life. When it comes here, we know who we are, because we're fans.
Many of the fans say they've attended multiple Star Wars advanced screenings, and it's an opportunity to reconnect with friends that come back year after year.
Well, thank goodness they have bathroom breaks and work breaks.
Yeah, of course.
There are plenty of Star Wars fans here in Korea. The Star Wars cast and crew and director held a presser today here in Seoul. Yeah, it's just a sign of the film's global appeal. And I'm not sure if you're a big fan of lightsabers or space, Kun Young, but the film premieres in South Korea next Thursday. Next Thursday it is. All right, Bruce, thank you so much. As we mentioned in our news feature, China's recent toxic smog has triggered a red alert in air pollution, the highest level in that country. So it really comes as no surprise that there are rising concerns about it here in Korea, being very close geographically. For more on the weather update, let's go over to our Jihan. Jihan?
Hello, Kun Young. Well, experts in Korea claim that the country will not be influenced by China's toxic smog this time, thanks to northeasterly winds. But the problem will break out when northwesterly winds blow in, as that's when the whole nation will be directly affected by the smog in China. But the thing is, northwesterly winds blow quite often during the winter, so we'll really have to keep a close watch. And fine dust and ultra-fine dust advisories were in place for parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces today, but dust levels are gradually going back to normal levels since late in the evening, and we can look forward to have a better air quality tomorrow with rain in the forecast. So lingering dust will be washed away. Jeju Island will be the most amount of rainfall with up to to 60 millimeters, while elsewhere we'll see 5 to 30 during the day. Now on to tomorrow's temperatures. It will be much milder tomorrow with a low kicking off of 5 for Seoul and Daejeon, 7 in Daegu, and Busan and Jeju will start out the day at 11 and 13. And afternoon highs will be similar to today, as here in Seoul will peak at 10 for Daegu as well, and Busan and Jeju Island will see a high of 14 and 16. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that is our broadcast on this Wednesday night. I'm Moon Gan-young. Thanks everyone for watching. We hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow on NewsCenter.